It's the Texas weather discussion video for Friday, the 10th of January. I'm Donovan Neal. Today, we have a very active day on our hands. We're dealing with the dual threat of some flash flooding and some severe weather for much of North Texas today. And tomorrow morning, we could see a light wintry mix, and then the rest of the weekend into early next week should be dry. So here's the upper air map across the nation this morning. This is a look at 500 millibars, around 18 to 20,000 feet off the ground. You can see we have a trough in the western states which will add very much add dynamic support for our potent storm system, which will come across much of the country today and tomorrow. Up on the temperatures earlier this morning, you could see highs in the temperatures in the mid 60s earlier this morning, and you would, if you didn't know any better, you would think this would be a very spring day, but nope, this is just the morning temperatures, and usually we have morning temperatures this warm around this time of the year. Things don't turn out that well. Up across the nation this morning, you can see much of the coldest air still locked in Canada. No signs of any Arctic air intrusions here in North Texas yet at this present time. The watch warning map very busy across the nation, and we do note in East Texas we have wind advisories in effect out in East Texas where the wind gradient could be quite high in advance of these storms. They could be a range around 15 to 35 to gusting up to 40 miles an hour in those areas. We have flash flood warnings in effect for parts of the Dallas-Fort Worth metroplex, extending all the way to in the Midwest through Detroit, Michigan. We have winter storm advisories in effect for extending towards Amarillo, Texas, all the way towards Chicago and parts of Detroit, and where they have some winter storm warnings and ahead of those regions. So lots of stuff going on today. And of course, on the day one outlook, we have a moderate risk, a level 4 out of 5 risk of severe storms. That includes parts of East Dallas, parts of Garland, Rowlett, Canton, Longview, Lufkin, Texarkana, Paris, and parts of Shreveport and Monroe. And I do note that the moderate risk will be expanded in the next couple of hours to include parts of Little Rock, Arkansas, Memphis, Tennessee, and parts of the lower Mississippi Valley. But most of the DFW area is under the enhanced risk of severe storms, which pretty much includes much of the DFW metroplex and parts of Austin, Houston, Lufkin, and areas in between. And of course, from there we have the standard slight risk and the marginal risk from there. And let's take a look at the wind probabilities at that point. You can see this moderate risk is where we have the highest wind probabilities. We have a 50-50 chance of seeing severe wind gusts within a 50-mile radius of any given 25-mile radius of any given point within that zone. And that hatched area, those black lines you see, as you can see, means we could see some hurricane force winds within that zone. So you're going to have to watch for that. And let's take a look at the hail probabilities. And you can see we for much of North Texas in that 30% zone, which means we could see hailstones 2 inches or greater. In that hatch zone, which means we could see hailstones greater than 2 inches at that point. And we are all too familiar with significant hail events across the DFW metroplex, so we're going to have to watch for that with any semi-discrete storm that develops today. And let's take a look at the tornado probabilities. The tornado risk is not the greatest risk, though we could see a few tornadoes out in north central Texas, and especially towards East Texas and the Arklatex region as well. And out in tomorrow, that risk shifts to the east. The enhanced risk of severe storms for much of the deep south, Mississippi, Alabama, Louisiana, and parts of the Florida Panhandle. Rain, yes, this is the rain outlook for the next 7 days. Much of the rain, of course, today and down here, anywhere from 2 to 3 inches, perhaps even greater, for much of North Texas today and through much of the overnight hours. So let's take a look at the modeling here. This is the 06Z run of the GFS file this afternoon at noon today. Again, outlook at 500 millibars, around 18 to 20,000 feet off the ground. You can see we have that troughing out in West Texas. Down here, we have that 1,000 millibar low near Wichita Falls. It'll be very, very busy this late afternoon towards the evening hours. So let's take a look at the timing here. This is the this is 4 o'clock off the 3 kilometer NAM. Looking at 4 p.m. today, you can see we have some the caps breaking, semi-discrete storms begin to develop, and those are the storms we need to pay attention to, because any storms that develops out of their own and becomes long tracked, we could see significant hail and maybe even a few tornadoes within any of those discrete storms that develop. But you can see at 6 o'clock today, you can see those storms form into a squall line, a QLCS, a quasi-linear convective system, and that's when the threat shifts from hail and tornadoes to more of a damaging straight line wind threat we were talking about. And this is at around 9 o'clock on this is 9 p.m. today, tonight. You can see the main threat shifts to damaging winds, especially out towards East Texas past the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex at that point. Mainly damaging winds and embedded tornadoes at that point. So let's take a look at the 850 millibar wind speeds. You can see this is very impressive here. This is the most impressive things out of all of these ingredients. 74 knots of just straight wind speed of straight wind speed, 74 knots, and you can see that's pretty much the most impressive thing here. And even if you don't get the severe weather, it'll still be a very windy day out in that max zone right there. Out in the max zone right there, still a very windy day out ahead of the storms, but that's where we can see the most damaging winds at that point. And you can see when we have that, we usually have high helicity values. So with those greater winds, we could see a few tornadoes within that zone. Now the Cape values, the instability values out in East Texas don't look all that impressive, but again, I do think that this is being significantly underdone. I do think that areas out in East Texas could see Cape values of around 1,000 joules per kilogram, especially out in north central Texas. That's just some bad judgment, bad error here. That's just an error right there. 1,000 joules per kilogram out in north central Texas, especially out in northeast Texas, where they could see the greatest threat of severe storms today. And let's take a look to maximum updraft helicity. You can see where the updrafts are mainly maxed out out in the south central United States, and especially in north central Texas. So again, we'll pop up the risk zones here. This is the timing for most of the storms. We'll have a couple of storms develop in the mid-afternoon hours, but really the late afternoon hours is where the cap is supposed to erode. Really, that's the peak of the daytime heating process. Anywhere in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, you can expect severe storms from at least 2 p.m. to around 9 p.m. today, and then out in East Texas near that moderate risk zone, 7 p.m. to early Saturday morning is where you can expect those damaging wind gusts to come through. Again, all modes of severe weather possible. Very large hail for North Texas, a few tornadoes for north central Texas, and the damaging wind gusts for around East Texas to northeast Texas to maybe around here at that point. But again, we've been through this before. You know the drill. If you know anyone that may be less informed in terms of severe weather days, just let them know that we have a risk of severe storms and to have a nice way to get warnings. There's always severe weather preparedness tips on our website. Know where to go in case you're under a tornado warning polygon. And you'll get through this just fine. We've been through this several times before. So let's go through the weekend. This is Saturday. Like I said, we could see a wintry mix light wintry mix Saturday morning before we clear for the weekend. But you can see that activity shifts to the east towards affects the deep south now. But you can see winter storm affecting parts of Kansas, Missouri, the Midwest, and Chicago and Michigan and Wisconsin at that point. But on Sunday, however, again, we still stay dry, mostly sunny skies, highs in the low 50s. We warm up on Monday, though, and we remain dry for most of the week. This is Monday. This is Tuesday, this is Wednesday, and this is Thursday. And not much change here. Again, not much change really on for much of the beginning of the week. Highs mostly in the highs in the mid to upper 60s at that point, and then we have that cold front come through on Thursday, which could drop us down to the mid 30s at that point. But that's way far out in advance. But here's a week from today, Friday the 17th of January. You can see we have a ridging still in the Gulf, but down here that we have that cool air in effect, and we could see some scattered showers and maybe a light mix at that point, but still way too far out in advance to tell at that point. Let's take a look at the end of the 10-day forecast period. This is Monday the 10th of January. You can see we have zonal flow and we remain dry. But let's take a look at the average precipitation coming off of the European ensemble. You can see precipitation at around 2.5 inches for this forecast period, and numbers for this week, for this upcoming week. Temperatures mild today. We drop on Saturday, and then we remain mild for most of the week, for most of the work week. Let's take a look at the 8 to 14 day temperature probability for the 17th through the 23rd of January. Pretty much telling us we're basically staying near average in terms of temperatures. No signs of any Arctic air intrusions anytime soon. That's it for the Texas weather discussion video. I have more notes in the blog. Expect forecast updates throughout the day. If you can, catch our local TV stations on the air at 4, 5, 6, and 10 o'clock. Thanks for watching. Have a great day and a weekend, and Godspeed.